All right, and this is our last biography. Congratulations if you made it this far. This one is about civil rights activist Melba Patillo. I did find a video, a more recent video of her on YouTube explaining her thoughts on civil rights. So when you finish this, I highly encourage you to watch it. It's just for bonus. As an American citizen, you have certain rights. If you're hungry, you can go into a restaurant and order food. If you're thirsty, you can drink from any fountain. You can use public restrooms. You can travel on the bus or train and sit wherever you want. But a Black citizen living in the South before 1960 couldn't do any of these things. In the South and the Southern states, Black people and white people were segregated or kept separate in nearly all aspects of life. Separate water fountains and restrooms had signs reading white or colored. Some restaurants were for white people only, others were for Black people. Black people had to sit in the back of the buses and the trains. Black people who did not obey these rules could be arrested. After all, they were breaking state law. The law was unfair, but it was the way it had always been since the slaves were freed after the Civil War. There were separate schools for Black people and white people, too. The schools were not of equality. White schools were well-kept buildings with trained teachers and new books. Black children went to schools in old buildings. Their teachers were often poorly trained, and they used the old books that the white schools were throwing away. Things were about to change. In 1954, the United States Supreme Court ruled in the case called Brown versus the Board of Education, Topeka. The court ruled that segregated schools were not equal. It ordered that schools be integrated, made available for people of all races. Many white people in the South were stunned. Their segregated way of life was suddenly illegal. They could not imagine white and Black children going to school together. These people fought any efforts to integrate the schools. Many Southern schools were not integrated until 10 to 20 years after the court's ruling. In Little Rock, Arkansas, which is the capital, by the way, a dramatic example of integration was about to unfold. The events that took place shocked the nation. A group of 9 Black students was chosen to integrate Central High School. Later, they became known as the Little Rock Nine. One of these students was Melba Patillo. Melba was born on December 7, 1941. It was the same day the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. Melba's mother had been one of the first few African Americans to integrate the University of Arkansas. Melba remembers being afraid of white people from the time she was 3 years old. By the time she was 4, she was asking hard questions. Why do white people write colored on all the ugly drinking fountains, the dirty restrooms, and the back of the buses? She asked. When Melba was 5, a white man refused to let her ride on a merry-go-round in the park. There was no space for me on that merry-go-round, no matter how many saddles stood empty, she later said. It was hard to live that way. Melba was lucky to come from a strong, loving family. Her mother had a master's degree and taught 7th grade English. Her grandmother gave her spiritual strength. She taught Melba to rely on the Bible's teachings. She told Melba, dignity is a state of mind, just like freedom. These are both gifts from God that no one can take away unless you allow them to. Melba was 12 years old the day the court ruled that segregated schools were against the law. Her teacher told the 7th grade class about the ruling. Shaking from fear, the teacher told the children to walk home in groups. No one knew what might happen, but Melba struck out on her own. On her way home, she was attacked by a white man who was furious about the ruling. He tried to rape the little girl, but a friend came to her rescue. It was clear that school integration would not come easily. In 1957, the Little Rock School Board agreed to allow 9 Black students to attend Central High School. The schools asked for volunteers. Melba and a number of others signed up right away. 9 students were chosen. Melba Patillo, Ernest Green, Carlotta Walls, Minnie Jean Brown, Thelma Mothershed, Elizabeth Eckford, Terrence Roberts, Gloria Ray, and Jefferson Thomas. The students knew it would be a hard fight, but each believed strongly in freedom and equality, but none of them knew that their lives would be in danger. On the first day of school in the fall of 1957, Governor Faubus ordered the Arkansas National Guard to surround Central High School. He ordered that only white students were to be allowed inside. For the next 3 weeks, the 9 black students stayed home. Then, a federal court judge ordered Faubus to remove the troops. The black students were brought into the school through a side door. Outside, an angry mob attacked black and white reporters nearby. Many parents kept their children home from school. All of this was reported in detail on the evening news. The entire nation watched in horror. The Little Rock Nine watched the full story on their televisions as well. That night, President Eisenhower sent in military troops. Troops from the 101st Airborne Division, jeeps, the helicopters arrived on the scene. The next morning, the students were picked up by soldiers. They rode in one station wagon. An armed guard rode in back and in front of the students. For the next few months, soldiers brought the students to school. Each student was given an armed guard who followed him or her from class to class inside the school. Melba's soldier was named Danny. He told the girl, "You will have to become a soldier. Never let your enemy know what you are feeling. Never let them see you cry." After a while, the troops were withdrawn from the halls. They remained outside the school. Then things got much worse for the students. White students would tease them, attack them, or ruin their clothes. The abuse went on and on. Finally, one of the girls had enough. A student who picked at her constantly finally made her snap. She poured a bowl of chili on his head. Black cafeteria workers cheered. The girl was expelled. Now the white students passed around cards reading, "1 down, 8 to go." But the remaining 8 lasted the whole year. In May, Ernest Green, the only senior in the group, graduated with the class of 1958. He became the first black person to graduate from Central High School. At first, there were some white students who tried to be nice to the black students, but they suffered abuse for those fighting for segregation. Most of the teachers didn't want the black students in their school, so they were little help. Most of the black community stood behind the Little Rock Nine. They praised their bravery, but a number of black adults thought that the Little Rock Nine was just causing trouble for themselves and the black community as a whole. Finally, that first long year was over. In the summer of 1958, Governor Faubus tried to get the court order to stop the students from returning to school. At first, he was given a 3-year delay, but a higher court reversed the ruling. Schools would open, the black students would attend. Rather than stand for the integration of his school system, Governor Faubus ordered all Little Rock high schools to be closed. The white community was furious. They vented their fury on the remaining 7 black students and their families, who received many midnight phone calls and death threats. The civil rights leaders feared for the students' lives. Finally, the students were sent out of state. They lived with other families and finished high school. 2 years later, 2 more black students attended Central High School. In schools across the South, more brave black students slowly broke down barriers in schools and colleges. The Little Rock Nine became a symbol of those many students. During that difficult year at Central High School, Melba kept a diary. She recorded events that happened. She wrote about her feelings. Her mother kept those notes and newspaper clippings. When Melba was 18, she began a book about her experiences. But the past was too painful for her to relive. Her book, Warriors Don't Cry, was not published until she was a woman of 53. In 1987, the Little Rock Nine had a 30-year reunion. They met on the steps of Central High School. Cameras flashed, reporters asked questions, fans asked for autographs. "What was it like to attend Central?" asked one reporter. "I got up every morning, polished my saddle shoes, and went off to war," Melba replied. "It was like being a soldier on a battlefield." While most teenage girls were listening to Buddy Holly's Peggy Sue, watching Elvis gyrate, swing his hips, and collecting crinoline, starchy full lips, I was escaping the hanging rope of a lynch mob, dodging lighted sticks of dynamite, and washing away burning acid sprayed into my eyes. The Little Rock Nine was then warmly welcomed by Governor Bill Clinton, soon to be President of the United States. But an even more exciting welcome was about to happen. As the group stood on the steps, the door to the school swung open. A black teenager came out to introduce himself. "Good morning. I am Derek Noble, president of the student body. Welcome to Central High School. The Little Rock Nine had won. Melba Patillo and other brave young people like her had changed the course of history. All right, good luck on the quiz. And good job finishing the assignment. Don't forget to watch that video.